Welcome to the second ever episode of our podcast From Cold to Close. My name is Saeed. I'm the founder here at SRC Growth, a company that works with management consulting and boutique consulting firms from around the world to help them increase their revenue and profitability by acquiring new clients. My guest today is Aaron Alpeter, the founder of IZBA, an operator, and Aaron is someone that has graduated from Unilever's prestigious supply chain management program. He's personally built and rebuilt over dozens of startups and has held C-level leadership positions at companies as Hubble Contacts, Sustain Natural, and the Flex Company and Mirror. So he's advised many companies as diverse as Ettitude as well as Sunsoil and Kind. So today we're going to talk about recruiting talent and what focusing on technical competencies or business development acumen. My guest today, Aaron, great to have you on the pod. How are you doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Looking forward to getting this up and running and really looking forward to our episode today. I guess I jumped into a little bit of your background, but I've probably not done it justice. So I guess for our listeners and viewers, do you want to share a little bit more about yourself and IZBA as a whole?
Yeah, sure. Happy to do so. So at its core, I'm a supply chain guy. That's what I've always liked to do. That's what I'm known for. And a number of years ago, I started a few companies. And I've built a portfolio of supply chain tech companies. So we have four individual companies that make up the IZBA group. The first one is IZBA Consulting, and it's an end-to-end supply chain company. And we've really started to focus on helping brands prepare to exit and helping acquirers integrate those acquisitions. So that's company number one. The second company is Sourcify, and what Sourcify does is helps brands lower their COGS. So we've got about 3,000 factories across 25 different countries around the world, and basically we help you de-risk your supply chain. And if you're paying $10 for something today, we'll find it for $7, sell it to you for $8. And then we've got a pair of software companies we've built. The first one's Capable. Capable helps brands hold their 3PLs accountable. So think automated on-time performance scorecards. And then lastly, Slotted, which we're really excited about. We just launched a little over a month ago, and it's a collaborative RFP tool. So it's got the internet's largest open database of fulfillment centers, and then we pair that on with a tech tool that allows you to build and evaluate RFPs and proposals from different 3PLs. So yeah, pretty excited for all four of those.
Yeah, 100%. And Slotted sounds very exciting. That's 1 month in, and it sounds like something that is really useful in the industry right now, especially with RFPs and consulting in general. It sounds like a very interesting and sophisticated tool that you've created there.
Yeah, we're excited for it. I mean, slotted.com if you want to check it out. It's only a $250 refundable deposit for a brand to go in and kick off an RFP, but it's completely free to go poke around and look at profiles and try to find a provider that way.
Well, yeah, do check it out, guys. It sounds like really interesting, especially as consultants looking. There's a lot of RFPs always going around, so it's always the right way to go. In terms of then, Aaron, in terms of, I guess, IZBA as a whole, it's your collection of those four companies. What made you start IZBA, and what made you go into the direction that you have done with these four companies and growing? I can imagine there's a lot on your plate at the moment, so it can't be easy.
Yeah, this was something. Well, first off, I got a fantastic team. So I always joke that it sounds much more impressive than it actually is. But this was really a portfolio that we built accidentally on purpose. And so what I mean by that is I started out when I was just me and I was consulting. And initially I was kind of thinking, is this going to be what I do as I go find another COO job somewhere? But really fell in love with consulting and being able to help founders and to make a really quick impact and then to rotate on to the next one. And so I started doing that, then hit a threshold where it's like, well, I've got more demand than what I'm able to do myself. And so now I'm going to hire people. And I took the decision to hire W-2 employees versus 1099 contractors so that we could really start to build a culture, a firm, processes, a brand, things like that. And then over time, as the business became profitable, we started looking at different ways to deploy that capital. And we started building software, we started acquiring businesses, and that's kind of where we are today.
Yeah, no, I always love hearing the journey that an entrepreneur or a business owner goes through, and the different levels that are required to be going through. For example, your 1099 to W-2 employees, such an important, and a lot of people actually don't get past that barrier of moving from that 1099 to W-2 because there's more responsibility involved in it. So in terms of recruiting talent, and that's really what we want to focus on today in today's episode, and you're someone who has done that countless number of times throughout your all the group of your portfolio of companies. How do you define the difference between technical competencies and business development acumen in the context of recruiting the ideal candidate?
Well, I think it really depends on the type of role you're recruiting for. Obviously, if we're hiring an analyst, we need someone who's going to be maybe stronger on the technical side than they have to be on the BD side. That doesn't mean that we don't train them on BD because we think everybody should understand how that works. And our perception of BD is different than other folks where it really comes down to doing really good work. Most of our business comes from referrals, comes from repeat clients, comes from folks that have moved on to new companies that we've worked in the past. And so we look at this as first and foremost doing really, really good work is the best sort of BD that we can do. Now, when it comes to trying to assess out those different things, we have a pretty structured process with each of the companies, but I'll stick with IZBA as an example. When we identify somebody who is interesting to us, we don't necessarily know what work level they're going to be inside the organization until we go through a pretty in-depth hiring process that involves a technical interview, a cultural interview, a case study, different things like that we're trying to tease out and understand, is this somebody who is very good and needs extra coaching on our side to manage multiple clients through their first-time consultant? Or is this somebody who we would feel comfortable putting in front of a boardroom, putting in front of investors, and letting them kind of go toe-to-toe and help shape strategy? And so we look at this in two ways. One, what's the potential of that individual? And everybody we hire has to have high potential. But then there's also a question of what can they do today? And you've got to reconcile those two things. If you hire only on potential, then you'll maybe not do as well as you should be doing right now. And so you've got to look at those, and then that potential piece is where that personal development piece comes in.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that response, and I think that it's a great point in the sense that there's so many aspects to hiring the right person. And you mentioned there you do the technical interview, and then there's so many different aspects, including a case study, right? And you want to be able to see where someone's competencies are now, but at the same time, the potential value that they have over a long enough period of time. So I think there's some really, really interesting points there. I guess in your own experience then, which is more critical for long-term success in a boutique consulting firm? Is it strong technical skills, or is it BD capabilities? And I know you touched on it being depending on the role or in that sense, but what do you think really drives the growth of an organization?
If I had to pick one, and I would first say that you need both, but if I had
Yeah.
to pick one, I think that you've got to be technically good at what you're doing.
Hmm.
You can be the best salesman in the world,
Hmm.
but if you do not do good work, if you don't know how to provide value or how to fix problems, you're going to churn through customers really quickly and you'll have a short-lived company. So first and foremost, you have to be very, very good at what you're doing. You have to be very knowledgeable about what you're doing. And that involves being very clear about what you don't do and what you're not good at. And I think where people run into problems occasionally is when they're maybe really good at one or two things, and they start going on the margins and saying, well, I think I can do that. I think I can do that. And you do want to stretch yourself, and don't get me wrong, you want to push it a little bit. But if you're going from inside the circle all the way several degrees removed, you're going to be in a situation where that client is paying for you to learn, and you're not going to be as happy, and they're not going to be as happy as they could be.
Absolutely. And I think the key point there, and especially in consultancy, is the fact that clients are hiring expertise, right? And so the technical aspect of what you do matters. And you're not a commoditized service or product, for example. You're not a shoe off a shelf where you can just keep churn through and things like that. There is an element of expertise that is required, and therefore that technical skill is something that is always looked at within a consulting firm. How has the balance between the technical and business development skills shifted in recent years for consulting roles, do you think? Do you think there's more of an onus now for more of those technical members of staff to be more business development savvy, BD savvy?
It's interesting. I'll give an answer I think may surprise you. I think it's becoming more important to be BD oriented
Yeah.
than technical in order to stand out.
Hmm.
There are a lot of very smart people out there. There are a lot of very smart consultants, whether they're part of a firm or independent consultants. We have quite a few independent consultants that reach out to us and say, "Hey, this is really hard. I want to be part of a team again. I'm having difficulty with lead flow, et cetera, et cetera." We kind of put them through the process, and we have a great matchmaking thing there. And so I think that you've got to be able to do both. I think that gone are the days where you could be just one thing, and you've got to understand marketing. Even though we're supply chain people, we understand marketing. We're not experts. We're not going to be the ones that you hire to do SEO or to build a website. But we understand those basics and how that impacts what we do and what we need to be doing. And so I think that one of the things that we pride ourselves on with folks that work with any of our companies is we want their time with the IZBA group to be a career accelerant. And so what that means is that they're going to get more shots on goal, more reps than they would get kind of in a single company. But when our alumni leave, they're taking directors of operations roles, VP of operations roles, COOs, they're founding companies, things like that. And so we need to have them not be one dimensional anymore. And so you first kind of go broad from a supply chain point of view, and then go deep in other areas.
I absolutely love that response, Aaron, and that was kind of the idea. The goal of this episode was to be able to get to this exact point, in the sense that you can't be one dimensional anymore in the modern world of consulting, and business development is becoming more and more important. And being able to bring in business for your organization, whether that be at a junior level or a higher level, is exceptionally valuable for an organization. And being in a bigger organization, as you said, and a great analogy, allows you to have more bats at goal when it comes to the right type of work and being able to do the work that you love to do. So in terms of, I guess, what's the biggest challenge you face in finding candidates with a strong balance of technical versus BD skills? Because from experience, technical is much more, once you've qualified, technical becomes a more common trait than the soft skills that come with the BD side of things. How are you seeing it?
Yeah, I would say that if I look historically and not just today,
Yeah.
our biggest challenge were in really putting down on paper what we wanted. Right? And this goes beyond a JD, but really pushing ourselves and saying, okay, well, there's lots of people out here who have this experience, have this capability, but what is it about their personality? What is it about the way that they approach problems? What is it about the way they approach conflict that we really want to understand? And then who are the best guardians in the organization to go through and understand that? And so I think that the hardest point is really being very clear on what you want and how that compares to what you need. And I think sometimes people get mixed up there. And I guess the last part would be, what can you afford? And being very honest about all those sorts of things. I mean, the number of times I've had people who, even when they're applying for jobs elsewhere, they'll say, "Oh, I'd like to $250,000, being a VP somewhere." I'm like, "Sounds great. Good luck." Those jobs exist, but they are very competitive. They're few and far between, and those folks may be 6 to 12 months or more kind of between jobs as they're going through things. And so I think that both on the applicant and hiring person, you've really got to be clear on what you want, what you need, what you can afford.
No, absolutely. And in terms of, and this might be topical with the current times, with AI and technology coming into play, is it all doom and gloom for those who feel that their jobs are on the line with the technical side, and BD and that softer skills, the human side of things, is becoming more and more of need? And that seems to be the trend with what.
I don't necessarily think so.
Yeah.
I think that AI is only making what we do in more demand, right? Because I think that AI will be very good at giving you generic answers. It'll be
Yes.
very good at helping you be middle of the road. What we're able to bring is experience, right?
Mm.
Expertise, having solved problems in a different way, and also understanding what questions to ask the AI, how to leverage it. When should you rely on that answer? When should you go back and validate it? I think the really interesting thing is that people point to AI and these jobs disappearing as like this big thing, but I actually go farther than that, where I see a pretty profound shift and how companies are being formed now. And, I'd say that in 2018, 2019, it was pretty much you had to be in New York or LA or San Francisco to start a startup. That's just where the investors were. That's where people were. And you went into an office pretty much every day. And even, when we started our business, we were remote. We've always been remote. But, rather than calling in from my basement, I would take the bus into Manhattan and I would go to the client's office and I'd work out of there. And that was an important piece. Well, what COVID did is it got everybody to be very comfortable working remotely, which is awesome. And the first wave of this was, my tech friends who took their tech salary, left San Francisco, went to go live in Montana or Wyoming, and just had this awesome arbitrage of look how much money I'm making and get to live wherever I want. And so the first shift here was people kind of doing anything they wanted in the U.S. And then it was one of these things where, well, shoot, we are just as effective whether we are 10 feet away or 10 states away, as long as we're there at the same time of time zone. And so then that became, all right, well, can I look outside of the U.S.? Can I go to South America since it's a similar time zone? Can I work with folks overseas in Asia who want to work my time zone? And so you start to see this opportunity come up where there were fewer and fewer, entry-level jobs that were available to folks in those startup hubs because you're now competing on a global level.
Yeah.
And so all this stuff is being pushed out that way.
Yeah, no, it's such a profound point, and it's spot on, and that's what we're finding. And this is one of the things that we actually tell our clients and clients we partner up with. We literally tell them the market has become bigger than ever before, and the opportunities have become bigger than ever before, but the competition has also become more than ever before. And so that's not just competition for growth and opportunities for work, but also who you're able to hire. So I had an interview with a CEO of a 7-figure business, and he specifically mentioned that we are no longer required to be constrained by the local area to hire who we need to hire, and working remote allows for you to be able to get the best people for the role rather than actually being reliant on your local jurisdiction or your local area. And so it's a really interesting point and something that's evolving day by day since the pandemic onwards. So it's really interesting to hear. In terms of IZBA as a whole then, and employees, once you hire someone, how does IZBA support employees in developing both their technical and business development skills? What is it that IZBA or all your portfolio of companies, what is it that you're doing to really develop your team?
Yeah, I think it starts by making sure that they're successful when they start.
Yeah.
And that comes into making sure you've got defined processes, defined templates, defined success criteria. So people walk in and they say, this is how we do it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. And you kind of remove some of that brain power from templates, right? Kicking things off, how we communicate with clients, things like that. So I think that's an important piece of it. One of the things that we do that's pretty, what I guess is remarkable or dramatic, is we do quarterly performance reviews. Most companies will do them annually. Because we see so many different types of clients and opportunities and things like that, we review performance quarterly. And you'll be surprised by how much growth happens in a 3-month period. And so that's a big thing. And we're looking at this pretty holistically in terms of the values that we have and that we look at. And so what we'll also be doing is throughout the months in between those quarterly reviews, we have different, rituals or traditions that we'll do. So we have a monthly team meeting, a weekly team meeting, where we go around and we share something we're grateful for, and we shout out somebody in the team. And we've got other mechanisms throughout the month where we are celebrating people who live our values or demonstrate those values. And so the development piece here is not just in, how good are you at earning money for the business. The development piece is how are we shaping you to be an ambassador of the brand? How are we shaping you to develop your own skill set and acumen so that, you came in and you understood just logistics, and now we're going to treat you and teach you how to do software. We're going to teach you how to do planning and lead negotiations and things like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's always an interesting point, and I think there's a lot of organizations out there that don't necessarily take that. Sometimes you will hire someone for a role and that's the role, and you're not looking at the overall development of them, and you might be looking at that development, but not to the extent where you can add more ribbons to someone's bow. And so I feel like it's always refreshing to hear something like that where you go, okay, when people do come to work with you or work for you, they have the opportunity to touch on so many different areas and aspects to be able to grow themselves as well as the organization. So really interesting. What are currently the biggest challenges that your businesses in your space are facing today? What do you think they are?
Well, I think anything that is a service business is going to be dependent or impacted by what's happening to their clients. And so over the last couple of years, we've seen a slowdown in venture capital. We've seen a paradigm shift in what the success criteria looks like. And so we've moved away from a Zerka environment where it was growth at all costs and people were just spinning to spend to now a what I think is a much better, much healthier aspect of you have to build a solid, profitable, repeatable business that has some value to investors in a much shorter time frame than, eventually. And so I think that that has been a challenge for a lot of folks because there are just fewer clients in general, and the bigger ones are getting bigger, smaller ones are disappearing or consolidating, and so we've been very fortunate that our business has continued to grow and our clients have stuck with us and we've got more coming to us every month. But it's one of those things where you've got to really know what you're doing and really be able to hone in on here's the fee you're going to pay, here's the output that you expect to have, and then actually delivering on that versus maybe traditionally it was, oh, I like so and so, so come help me out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's such a great point in the sense that return on investment is such a big aspect of any kind of engagement with client engagement, and so being able to deliver on what you say you'll be able to deliver on is such a huge factor. In terms of, I'm really interested to hear more about slotted.com and that being your new venture and you're 1 month in. Can you share, I guess, some more info? I know you touched on it at the top of the show, but could you share some more info in, I guess, the journey to where you've got to with Slotted and also where you think it will go, what you're hoping will?
Yeah, this is something that we've been thinking about and toying with for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And so it's something that the first business capable was kind of in this vein. It was about helping to validate 3PL performance. And really the thought was like, let's do something so that we make it easier for people to find good 3PLs. And so that's kind of been in the back of our mind. And we've done a lot of work over the years on the consulting business of just helping people evaluate, sort things out. And it was surprising how difficult it was for some people to build a really valuable RFP. They'd either be missing information, it wouldn't be clear. We'd hear from our 3PL partners all the time that like, hey, I have to ask 30 questions, and then I realized that these guys are just wasting my time because they weren't serious. And so there was this disconnect there between these 3PLs. Again, they're dealing with probably a shrinking client base. They're all fighting for volume. They want better leads. They don't want more leads; they want better leads. And at the same time, these brands are trying to really figure out the right way to go about doing this. And so the interesting thing is, before Slotted, people used to find a 3PL in a couple of ways. The first one is they would ask someone, right, and say, hey, who are you working with? Who do you recommend? And might go that route. Well, that's good if your business looks like my business and it's a relatively close time period, but your experience could be different than mine. I would hire a consultant or hire a matchmaker. Consultants are expensive, and matchmakers, I think the incentives aren't always aligned. Or you would Google, and you would find basically the businesses that were good at SEO and not necessarily the ones that were good for you. And so that's kind of the context of how we were thinking about building it and where we got to today.
Yeah, no, and I love that journey. And often a good solution requires years of thought, right? And finding the problem, actually experiencing the problem for yourself, hearing about the problem, being immersed in the problem, and then trying to find that solution itself. So I think that it sounds really interesting, and I'm sure those who have listened I'm hoping that you get some opportunities in that sense of some organizations being able to use it in the near future. In terms of then the growth of your organization and your portfolio of companies over the last number of years, how has your competitive landscape evolved over time? It's a question that, and you touched on it before with the pandemic and things changed since COVID, but has it evolved? And if it has, how has it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you look back in just the last 8 years,
Yeah.
everything's different. Everything's different. We've gone through a pandemic, now 2 Trump presidencies, massive social upheaval, AI. I mean, everything is different. Okay. And so to say it shifted a little bit, it's like, okay, well, that's an understatement. I think a better question is how have we changed and how, what are we looking at? And I would say that, if you look at Sourcify, the business when we acquired it was primarily geared toward China, right? And that was the factory floor. That's where there. And we have a fantastic business and team in China, and that continues to grow and do well. But we found that there's a lot of interest in reshoring and looking at other opportunities. And so we have made massive inroads into not only India, Thailand, Malaysia, those places, but Mexico, Brazil, Morocco, Dominican Republic. And so we've really started to build this global footprint of these factories to look at that. And so that's been one thing we've looked at. There's also been a massive change and shift change in technology. And we've recognized that you've got to be using AI in your business. You've got to be, among the best from a tech perspective to make sure that you are spending less time on non-value added client work. So this means getting all the admin stuff to be taken care of either by a robot or by, a lower cost provider that you can outsource it to. But really comes down is we recognize that the future is going to be around first party data. And so if you think about this, if AI is going to commoditize information, in the way the internet commoditizes information, and you can have a bunch of consultants that are asking for this commoditized information. Really, the difference in the companies that are going to win 5 or 10 years from now are the ones that have these proprietary data sets. And it doesn't mean that you share, client A's information with client B's. Far from it. But being able to have your own data set where you're looking at this and saying, wow, fulfillment rates appear to be increasing by 10%. We should be aware of that. Or wow, it appears that this port is going through a lot more delays than maybe you expected. Or wow, the way that people are innovating is so much more different, and we're seeing an increase or decrease in the pipelines that are flowing through. These are all things that provide an enormous amount of value to the clients that we're helping, but also enrich the enterprises to really understand this is where the market's going, this is where we need to go, so that we can be ahead of the curve.
No, absolutely. I think it's a really interesting point in terms of having first party data. We always say to all our clients, data is how you should be operating in today's age, especially with all the information we have. And we're living in an age where people are less likely to Google something now and more likely to go to ChatGPT or Perplexity AI or all these other places where they'll type it in and go. Obviously, the numbers aren't skewed towards the AI versus Google. Google's one of the biggest organizations ever. But I can see it, and this is my personal opinion, I can see in the not too distant future where people naturally gravitate to these AI being able to scour the whole internet to be able to find the information rather than you going, okay, I only get page 1 of Google and SEO. So I think it's a really interesting point in making sure you're able to create your own data sets and create your own and have access to first party data to be able to make intelligent decisions for moving forward with your business. So yeah, really great point there. In terms of and I like to ask this to entrepreneurs in general, especially those that are running in your case, a number of organizations. What are the most important metrics that you look at when you're growing your businesses? And there could be a whole host of different things, but what do you look at to be able to grow your organization? Yeah.
That's a great question. It's going to be different for each one.
Yeah.
Obviously, you want to understand how predictable your revenue is. Mm-hmm. I think that's a really important one. And obviously, like secondary is what's the revenue, what's the profit, all those sorts of things. But what's the predictability of the revenue? If you have something where it is a lot of retainers, a lot of subscriptions, you can build your business a little bit closer to the sun, knowing that that $50,000 in subscription revenue is going to be coming in probably next month, and it's probably going to look the same for the next couple of months. So I'm okay spending up to $45,000 a month. Whereas if you're very project based and things are in and out, you may have a $50,000 project this month, but unless you've got 3 or 4 in the pipeline, you better not be spending $45,000 a month. Yeah. And so I think that's a really important piece. Is just what are the characteristics of the business and how aggressive or conservative do you need to be there? For example, Sourcify, we carry a very large cash reserve. because of swings, right? Because of Chinese New Year, because of production, things like that. We need to be able to accommodate those sorts of things. Other businesses we're much tighter and much leaner on. And so it's those characteristics. So that'd be the first part. Second thing, in terms of metrics, I think I always like to look at BD and what are the underlying sales metrics that are coming through. Who's in the pipeline? What's in the pipeline? What's the process? What deals we're winning? What deals we're losing? Why are we losing those deals? Who's coming back? Why are they coming back? Why are they not coming back? Those are all sorts of questions I look at because I think that in my role as a founder or CEO, my responsibility is to pay more attention to the leading indicators as opposed to the lagging indicators. The lagging indicators are super important. You've got to understand what your profit, your revenue, all those things are, but you hire an accounting team for that.
Yeah.
Right? Your team looks at those. As a CEO, you have to be looking at the leading indicators because you need to know what you can do today to solve a problem 6 months from now.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And I couldn't, it resonates so much with me as well. Inputs equals outputs. How much input do you need to create the output that you're looking for? And that's how I run my business. I'm sure that's how many business owners, and especially those who might be early on in their journeys that aren't necessarily doing that, that's definitely something that you need to be looking at doing, because successful business owners and successful CEOs and founders, they're always doing the inputs and outputs. And I always say revenue is a vanity metric, right? So it's there to just tell you, and profitability is where you really want to know. But that's after the fact. You really want to be doing all the, as you said, leading indicators. So with your portfolio of companies, Slotted being the last to join the crew, where do you see the business in the next 3 to 5 years? Where do you see yourself being? What are you looking to achieve? Where do you want to get to?
Yeah, I want to make sure that first and foremost, we are making a positive impact for our clients. Again, we're looking at leading indicators here versus lagging. I want to make sure that clients are excited and thrilled with the value that they got from working with any of our companies. I want to make sure that their businesses are better off, that we're working toward those goals, whether they be an exit, whether they be integrating an acquisition that we have there. And so I'd like to see our team orient around those tangible things versus here's just work that we do, right? It's here, the work that we do is for a particular purpose. I'd like to see the business become more and more of kind of the center of the ecosystem when it comes to content, free resources, and where can we do the most amount of good and impact for the most amount of companies, understanding that we're very selective about who we work with, and so not everybody that we touch will be a client, and so how do we benefit them as well?
Sure. And I love to hear that as well. The impact that you're having is one of the most important things that you can really look for, especially at your stage of running so many businesses, whether they be longer term or very much startups. So how do you advise aspiring consultants to develop both their technical and business acumen? And that might be within their organization, whether they're running their organization, if they're an independent consultant. What would you say? What would your advice be?
Yeah, I do a lot of these sorts of conversations, so probably a couple times a month I talk to somebody who is becoming a consultant or wants to start a consulting firm or is been working this, and so I'm very open with that sort of feedback and those sorts of things because I think one, the market's big enough and we need more good people doing the work here. It comes back to what we talked about earlier. You've got to be really good at one or two things, and you've got to be good at kind of generating those sales. And so my advice that I give to people wanting to start a consultancy is to niche out, like be very, very clear about what you're going to do. One of the things that my team's probably tired of hearing is I usually say if we try to be everything for everyone, we end up doing nothing for nobody. And so the really key thing here is like if you're going to be a supply chain consultant, what aspect of supply chain do you want to focus on? Even though you may have expertise in everything, what do you want to be known for? Right? If there are 300 other supply chain consultants that say, "Oh, we'll do end to end, we'll do optimization, we'll do these sorts of things," like how do you stand out? How are you different? But if someone says, "Hey, I really just want to focus on beauty brands and I just want to focus on their fulfillment operations and I really want to focus on helping them go international," well, that's pretty niche, and it might take some time to get into being known for that thing. But if that's really your expertise, that's really what you want to be known for, you can be a very well regarded resource in a short period of time if you focus all of your content, all of your efforts, all of your work, testimonials around that sort of thing.
No, absolutely. Niching out is such a great piece of advice, especially when you're working as an expert in something. So I really loved that. So what keeps you excited about the future of consulting, your business, consulting, and everything that's.
Yeah, I am so optimistic for 2025 and beyond. I think that the industry is in a great spot. So if I think just broadly about it, we've gone through a difficult period of time as a startup ecosystem, but we've learned a lot of good habits. We've gotten rid of a lot of bad habits, right? People understand now that you got to be profitable. There's not an endless money train of VCs. We're not going to let bad businesses limp on for years and years thinking we're going to turn it around. It's like, nope, get in, fix it, move on. And so I think that background lends itself very well to what we do because our goal is helping people to start, scale, and exit. And the way that we talk about working with people is start scaling and then we want to exit. We don't want to run your business in perpetuity. And so we want to be very clear about what it is that you're trading money for, what's that outcome, and then let's put a plan together so that we can do that. And some of these things can be quick. If you need a network redesign or a new factory found or things like that, we can do that in a couple of months. But if you're like, hey, I need to get my business to my exit window, and I need to make sure that I am the most attractive acquisition target so that this acquirer buys me and doesn't buy my competitor, we can put a plan around that. And so I think that there's going to be more M&A, there's going to be better, stronger businesses that are being created and scaled, and I'm just excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, no, it is an exciting time at the moment, and starting the new year with. I always like to say when I speak to entrepreneurs, I love speaking to entrepreneurs and business owners because everyone's always optimistic, and I love that. Next year is always going to be the better year, and it's if you're not growing, you're dying. It's that saying, isn't it? So it's always great to hear that. My last question for you today is a question that I'll be asking, and I ask in every podcast. It's if you had a magic wand to solve one business problem, what would that be?
In my business or just in general?
Just in general. And also in your business as well, actually. Yeah.
If I had a magic wand, I would print more time. So I would pause things, I get a bunch of things fixed, and we'd go through and do that. I think that making sure you've got a really coherent data infrastructure, a really coherent marketing infrastructure and strategy, those are all big things that we are learning and we are implementing and putting a lot of effort into right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are the things that we're working on for our business. I think in general, I would try to help people become more open to the idea of change. I think we are entering into a very interesting period over the next couple of years. And I think that if you assume that things are going to be the same they were the last 5 or 10 years, it's going to be a very difficult time for you. But if you embrace the change and you say, look, what got us to where we are may not be to what we want to get us where we're going. I think those sorts of people are going to be much more successful.
No, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Well, Aaron, that was a great interview, a great podcast, and I really appreciate your time today and sharing your insights. And it's been really valuable. And I think that someone who is able to run the portfolio of companies that you have done, be able to create services as well as products in software and things like that, and being able to just provide the insights that you've been able to provide, it's been extremely valuable. So I really appreciate your time in helping us out today.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.